from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
It's Tom Giordano sitting in for Rich tonight, who's off, but he is with us in spirit on a day where if you have a pulse, you have to have a reaction to this. If you're a talk radio listener, I'll give you the phone lines. I know you're going to want to use them tonight, given what's gone down. The repercussions already in. The fundraising vehicles for President Trump have been broken down by the surge. I saw Congressman Lee Zeldin say he just got $800,000 for the Trump campaign, and it was the easiest ask for an amount of money like that in one fell swoop that he's ever done. Marco Rubio saying $50 million has been raised at this point in reaction to this. Phone lines are 833-482-5337. Rich is with us in spirit tonight. He put up on Truth Social yet another travesty of justice from the politically motivated left wing. Looks like America will get its first convicted felon, POTUS. They're so afraid of him winning fair and square, they pulled this corrupt legal maneuver, and it's been backfiring since its inception. Genesis 50:20, hashtag Trump did nothing wrong. All right, Rich checking in tonight in spirit with us. That's what he put up on Truth Social. Would love to hear from you. You can get in right away, and the repercussions of this are already all over the place. We have some great guests coming up tonight, legal minds, to break down what happened here. It appears to be the consensus. Well, one fact that you should keep in mind here, and this just came down from Jonathan Turley, that the jury didn't even specify what the second crime was. You know that whole thing in this, right? With the underlying crime and then the unlawful actions. They didn't specify in the jury document when they come off of these 34 convictions. No specification on that. And again, this is a combination of Alvin Bragg, elected to let criminals run wild, illegal immigrants run wild in New York. That's what New Yorkers want. Stop complaining about it. But to get Trump. Letitia James, the attorney general there, same thing, allow crime to go on, but get Trump in the civil matters that she's involved in. It's the corruption of a jury pool that was hugely anti-Trump. And then our buddy Judge Merchan, who takes center ring here. I mean, there's talk tonight that he will sentence Trump to prison. Several people believe that. Now, that won't happen because they'll have appeals until after the election. The date is June 11th, when it'll be July 11th, when it'll be sentenced, and that is just on the cusp of the Republican nominating convention. I see some idiots out there tonight saying that what are the odds Trump won't be the nominee? They can't go forward in this situation like this. Now, I'm not a hack. I'm not here to tell you we know yet. I'm going to be on tomorrow night. And by then, we'll have the overnight polling on this. And that's only overnight. What does this do for Trump's chances? This preposterous poll that was out there a few weeks ago saying 23% said they're less likely to vote for Trump if he's convicted of anything in this. That number is way high. What the Biden people are counting on is that incrementally, maybe as few as 0.5% to 1%, in the swing states, like where I am in Pennsylvania, will turn on Trump that are Republicans or independents and go with Biden or not vote for Trump, just stay out of it. That's what it's about. It's about putting that tag on Trump, convicted felon, criminal. That's all that they wanted out of it. Now, some are crazy. They want to see him in jail no matter what happens down the road. But the main thing here is the political. And it's not just to keep him off the campaign trail. It's to tag him with that. Why has Biden not spoken from the White House tonight? It's the anniversary of the death of Beau Biden. So tomorrow, I would guess Probably. I don't know. I know that Trump is speaking from Trump Tower at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And I thought that Trump handled it very well today, everything considered. Reporters laughing in the courtroom as this went down. You know that's going to happen. Jonathan Turley reporting that. He was in there. But they did not even specify what the second crime was. Now we have the Hunter Biden trial coming up next week. So what I'm asking tonight is, are you in this? I'd love to hear from you. If maybe you're a bit not Trump, not crazy anti-Trump, how does this make you feel? Does it make you feel anything? And if you are pro-Trump, are you one of those people that's going to wimp out and say, give up, can't do anything about it? Or are you more emboldened? I told you, Rubio just tweeted out that about $50 million has been raised. That's an astounding figure. I told you the Lee Zeldin story. So these things are happening there. This Judge Marchand is the boldest guy imaginable. I did an interview with Alan Dershowitz today, who was in the courtroom with Marchand and got a real good view of him. And it was astounding what Dershowitz told me about this guy and what he might do. We'll play that later in the show tonight. He's emboldened here, though. He should have recused himself in this, given the daughter, given the groups that he sends money to. But he didn't. And he's riding high at this point. And he's emboldened to do even more. His instructions to the jury allowed them to be boxed in. In other words, it would have taken jurors to push back not only on the prosecution, but on the judge. And the weirdest thing today that I noticed, around 4:30, I'm watching to see what might happen. They were ready to go home for the day, be dismissed. Then all of a sudden, they said they had a verdict. The real verdict tonight, the real verdict is going to come down on Election Day. So how does this make people feel? Incrementally, I think it takes away, as I said, in the swing states, some of the voters I mentioned. But is it going to energize Trump voters so much? For example, on my show in Philadelphia tomorrow, I have an attorney on who's already amassed an army of poll watchers, for example, on Election Day, so that the shenanigans that happen in Philadelphia don't happen as much. The last time she was on, it was unbelievable, the number of people that registered. I'm saying tomorrow, this is going to be a registration like you've never seen. We had Scott Presler on last night saying if you're in a swing state, how you can encourage people to vote through him, the mechanism he set up in the swing states if you're in a red or blue state, and you're not really in this election. Are you more energized by this? It was kind of surprising at the 11th hour today that this came down, but it did, and this is where we are right now. Here is Sky News reading a statement from the Biden campaign on the verdict. As I said, President Biden will speak on this tomorrow. He's been waiting for this, and I predict he's going to call him convicted felon Donald Trump. I also predict, now it's too soon to know yet, but I think this is a way for Biden to weasel out of the debates. Is he really going to debate a convicted felon? Is he going to be emboldened? Is he actually going to think he can stand up for 90 minutes and debate on this? And then you got the Hunter Biden trial. I can hardly wait, starting this coming week. So here is Sky News breaking down the Biden statement on the conviction of President Trump.
We have had a statement, not from Joe Biden, the president, but from the Biden-Harris campaign, from Joe Biden, the candidate. And I will read it to you. It says, in New York today, we saw that no one is above the law. Donald Trump has always mistakenly believed that he would never face consequences for breaking the law for his own personal gain. But today's verdict does not change the fact that the American people face a simple reality. There is only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. Convicted felon or not, Trump will be the Republican nominee for president. It goes on to say the threat Trump poses to our democracy has never been greater. He is running an increasingly unhinged campaign of revenge and retribution, pledging to be a dictator on day one. and calling for our Constitution to be terminated so he can regain and keep power. A second Trump term means chaos, ripping away Americans' freedoms and fomenting political violence, and the American people will reject it this November. That there, a statement from the Biden-Harris campaign.
All right, well, President Trump is the one that cited he wants to protect the Constitution today. Where are his constitutional rights? And I would tell you where I sit. This is clearly that not the type of country we want, the lawfare that went on here, a crime that the jury can't even tell us what the second crime is in here. You know, the 444 thing. You don't have to be unanimous. 4 of you can vote to say falsifying business records. 4 of you can say it's a campaign finance. 4 of you can say it's a man on the moon. And it will be unanimous. That's what the judge told him. It's this judge. He is perfect casting for this. All right, phone lines. Love to get your reaction. It's easy to do here if you've never called before. 833-482-5337. 833, the number 4, Valdes. How are you feeling with this at this point? I see a lot of people surfacing, coming after me on Twitter. Aha, it's over. Is it? Or is this just going to energize? If these numbers are right, 50 million raised tonight. That is quite a haul. All right, those calls coming up. Dom Giordano sitting in on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end, and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one, with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
President Trump almost immediately after the verdict today. Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich tonight. And while this is going on in Alvin Bragg's New York, as he's celebrating tonight, the violent crime continues. You know, New York used to be relatively safe. The NYPD has an overwhelming number of cops, and they're good. And particularly in Midtown Manhattan, I used to go there to moderate shows, do shows, and I was always impressed with it. Today, a man was stabbed in both legs by 3 men believed to be wielding a machete. As soon as you hear a machete, right? Outside a Times Square McDonald's Thursday afternoon. The victim was not identified, was rushed to Bellevue Hospital after the 1 p.m. attack at the McDonald's near 45th Street and Broadway. He was listed in stable condition. I mean, there might be within an earshot 75 to 100 cops in that area. But given, we'll see if these men are out by now, by the time America at Night is on. it's ridiculous what's going on. It's brag. This is what he's up to versus going after Trump. All right, let's take some callers. Oh, we got a Don with Dom in Minnesota on WKMO here on America at Night. Don, thanks for being first in.
Hey,
Go ahead.
how you doing?
Good.
Well, I'm calling from Minnesota, and my reaction to what happened, I'm just a guy, but we travel widely, our family. We are not going to be going to New York City ever again, and we're not going to be going to Atlanta. Now, that's fine. There's a lot of great places to go, but I have little control over how I spend my money, right? I don't have much control over these characters. But the other thing is, I have given to Trump a little bit of money, over the years. I mean, small change. But after today, I'm going to put down some serious dough. Okay?
What are we talking about? What are you thinking about, Don?
I would just say that I would say 10 grand.
Wow. Don, that's astounding. It really is.
Yeah.
Why that much? What would make you give up $10,000?
$100, right? What's that?
Why would you donate that much? Why?
Well, what can I do? I'm in a Democratic state, Minnesota. I can't do I'm only one vote, but I can certainly do what I can to see that Trump gets in and we stop this weaponization and decline of the country.
Well, I commend you, Don. Absolutely. And Minnesota is in play. Virginia is more in play. And you're doing something good there, I think, that you are having a voice in this. That's if enough people do that. Well, 50 million already we've heard tonight. So, Don, go to it. Thank you, Don, very much. I thought he was going to say $1,000 or something. That would be a lot. 10 grand? I'm not sure. I just know they crashed the various sites raising money for Trump. I haven't gotten the full figure, but Marco Rubio on Twitter said in the neighborhood of 50 million. Now, that doesn't take it that we'll see the overnight polling. How do people feel about this? I think the initial reaction is going to be Don's. Well, some of these people who are Republican in name only, though, he's a convicted felon. How can I look my kids in the eye? I can't vote for a convicted felon. We'll see if that holds up or not. All right, I know a lot of people want to get in tonight. We're going to bring you a real legal star, though, coming up. I think he's been on Rich's show before several times. Jesse Binnall, Trump attorney and partner in the Binnall Law Group, surrogate, if you will. Take us inside this. What's the mood tonight? Where does this go next? Imagine the jury, Jonathan Turley reporting, could not specify what the second crime was here. The thing that's the whole trigger of this. What was that? Did they split on it? I think America has a right to know. We should know this. This is that serious. Not each individual vote. Did they vote 4-4-4? Did they all vote for one thing over another? And the real Bragg set this in motion. But it's Judge Marchand. He set this up in a way that the jury would have been hard-pressed to go the other way here. And he's riding high, and he thinks he's going to do more. All right, we'll break that down next. Take more of your calls. Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich Valdes on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Dom Giordano pinch hitting. I'm only a law school dropout. Now we got the real guy on who's often been on with Rich, Jesse Binnall, Trump attorney and partner in the Binnall Law Group. Jesse, welcome in. Thanks very much for joining us. Your overall reaction from today. What's the number one thing when this went down at 4:30 or so?
Well, thanks for having me on tonight, Dom. And let me just say that overall, the the reaction, I think, for myself and a lot of Americans is today was an absolutely outrageous day. But we need to follow the example of President Trump. When you saw President Trump walk out to the microphones this afternoon after the verdict, you saw kind of a steely resolve from him, what we have, really come to see from him a lot over the last 8 years when he's had to put up with stuff like this more than anyone should. Our country is quite frankly under attack right now from people who want to bring Marxism to America, people who have the Stalinist ideology that you can show me the man and I'll show you the crime. And we need to be able to, as a lot of people have said, the real verdict here is going to be on November 5th. It wasn't today, it's on November 5th, because that's the opportunity that we have to really take our country back right now. And it's what we absolutely have to do, because if out-of-control prosecutors and left-wing partisan judges can do this to the President of the United States, they can do it to any of us.
Yeah, that's well put. And look, Bragg did what he could here, but it's Merchan who got it over the finish line, because Bragg could not craft anything more convoluted than this. But Merchan's rulings and the way he boxed it in, I think. Jesse, did you happen to see Jonathan Turley? I'm not sure if you were in court. He was in court. Said that the jury did not specify what the second crime is. We don't know the vote of the three choices and how they arrived at that. They just didn't specify anything. Now, of course, the anonymity of jurors and how they voted. But we ought to know, in this case, what it is that propelled them to this. That ought to be in the document, you would think.
No, that's right. And I wasn't in the courtroom. I think Jonathan Turley's had some excellent analysis over the past few days. And one of the things that he pointed out recently, I think probably yesterday, was that these jury instructions kind of left the jury no choice. They were jury instructions that were meant to result in a conviction. And I think that he's right that it's a problem that we didn't have a verdict sheet that had a special interrogatory on the question of what the underlying crimes were in this case. But this all goes back to the issue of Juan Merchan and the fact that he didn't want to send jury instructions back to the conference room with the jurors during their deliberations. He refused to do that. And he's the one who crafted the sheet that the jurors filled out with their verdict. And there should have been a special interrogatory on there to actually ask what that second crime was, that elusive imaginary crime was. But of course he wasn't going to put that on there, because that's something that could only help bolster an appeal and would only show, that there was not unanimity among the jury on those particular questions. And so for a judge that didn't care about getting reversed, because at the end of the day, he cares about affecting the election. He doesn't care if this conviction stands up on appeal.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually any rational person, their own pride, their own dignity, their own profession, and all that, that's what they care about. They don't want to be reversed. They're careful, even if they're a bit incompetent. That's all it was about. He's a hero now for bringing this home. So let's turn to and get your thoughts on what happens with the sentencing on CNN and others. Even though it's CNN, I don't put it past this judge to recommend jail time, but Trump would still be out on appeal, right? Is there any way that he could be sent on home arrest or jail time and be stopped from campaigning?
Oh, you bet. You bet. This judge, now has a wide discretion as to what he can do. And this is a judge that already is being governed by his politics, not the law, and has from day one. Make no mistake about it. Let's remember that this is a judge that probably never should have been assigned to this case. There's, as Congressman Elise Stefanik has pointed out in a complaint, it is effectively statistically impossible that all these Trump offenses and make-believe offenses, and including the Bannon case,
Yep.
all get assigned to the same judge. Okay, that's statistically impossible. So from the moment that somebody put their thumb on the scale to get him this case, to every way that he's made every decision in this case since then, he's made sure that it's going to be the politics that guide his way through this, not the law. And so if he wanted to actually incarcerate President Trump, what would happen is he would hand down a sentence of incarceration. President Trump would ask to remain out on bond while the case continued to be appealed. Judge Merchan could deny that, and then his fate would be in the hands of the appellate courts, and whether or not they would actually stay that. Now, I think there's a pretty good chance that they would, but you got to remember that for the first level of appellate courts, these are still New York City judges, people that still, quite frankly, hate Donald Trump. And I think, unfortunately, have let their political animus guide them as well instead of the law. So I think that we can't take anything for granted. What we just have to know right now is that President Trump is showing more resolve than I think anyone else ever could in his situation. And I think one of the reasons that he's able to do that is because he knows the American people have his back, because we need him back in the White House so badly right now. And they can try to lock him up. They can try to do anything in the world to try to stop him. But at the end of the day, it's the fact that the American people want him back so badly that's going to, I think, backfire on them if they try any of those shenanigans.
Yeah, I agree. How about this from Mark Levin and Alan Dershowitz I had on, the direct appeal to the Supreme Court? It doesn't seem to me like they would move very quickly on that, since they're taking their time, justifiably, the end of the month on the immunity thing. Maybe the last day of June we'll get that. What are your thoughts on that as a strategy?
Yeah, I don't think the Supreme Court's going to want to interfere outside of the regular order. And so I think they're going to probably want them to go through the New York appellate process first. If there's something happens that truly is an emergency, there are mechanisms for getting that to the Supreme Court quickly. And, the one thing I think we see from the Supreme Court right now is they're looking for cooler heads to prevail. And the idea of some of these left-wing judges, people like Juan Merchan and Tanya Chutkan, judges that just so badly want to imprison and destroy Donald Trump.
I'm sorry to interrupt because of time, but I wanted to ask you, Jesse, you just said something that I think is a really interesting point here.
Yeah.
You mentioned the other judge, too. Does that embolden them now, in your view, to move more in those cases to do what they can, even though my read is, particularly with Judge Cannon and with the debacle in Atlanta, but it's Jack Smith and the other judge you mentioned? Or does it calm things down with that because they already got the tag on them now and they're going to be more careful? Well, how does that go?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think Tanya Chutkan knows that this is her one chance at getting to Donald Trump because, once there's a real attorney general, these cases should be immediately dismissed. And so I think she is just dying to get find a way to try her case. So I think she's going to try, no matter what the Supreme Court does, she's going to do everything in her power to move this thing along as fast as possible so that she can try to interfere in the presidential election. And that might mean that she schedules some long, drawn-out evidentiary hearing, for instance. Or it may mean that she ups the ante in her gag order to try to prohibit what President Trump can say on the campaign trail in order to try to cripple him in his campaign activities. But I don't think we've heard the last of Tanya Chutkan as well. And I think after the Supreme Court makes its decision, we'll probably see more from her.
You're the only guy today bringing this up. And, I agree more with you. I'd like to believe, all right, they got what they wanted out of this. They'll be more careful because they really want to convict him at some point. but they're scared to death to win, and then they can't convict no matter what.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But I think, the one good news here is I think they're going to just embolden the American people. I mean, I think the one thing that we all know now is that we need to match the resolve of President Trump here. And however angry everybody is, we need to take that anger and turn that into resolve. And, we know at this point that we need to make sure we get out and vote. We need to make sure everybody that we know gets out and vote. We need to make sure that, we lend our efforts in making sure there's election integrity. And quite frankly, we need to open our pocketbooks. I'm going to do that again tonight and donate to the campaign. And I think a lot of other people are too.
Jesse, just to inspire you with a guy called in, just I'm an ordinary guy. I've contributed, $50 before. He was talking about 10,000 tonight.
Wow. See, yeah. That's how angry the American people, and that's the right way to channel our anger right now.
Exactly. Jesse, a pleasure. I do hope we talk again. Thank you. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Great stuff there. We'd love to continue to get your reaction. You do that at 833-482-5337. Dom Giordano from Philadelphia in for Rich Valdes.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
It was great analysis from the attorney we just had, America at Night, Dom Giordano from Talk Radio 1210 in Philadelphia, sitting in for Rich tonight. Follow me on Twitter at DomShow1210, at DomShow1210. And you heard that angle developing. I know it's fresh what happened here today, but does this embolden that judge in Washington we were talking about with the so-called insurrection case to pounce now, to move heaven and earth and to say, this is my one shot. If he wins, we're not going to get him. And he's wounded now. We're going to go after this. If she does move, because that's been in a state of, not so much going on with it. It looks like it won't happen before the election. Are people then going to revolt even more? And if these fundraising numbers on what I'm seeing out there, and I'm taking them with a grain of salt, but they are enormous. And that's the sense. But it's not just the fundraising. The attorney was right. I would add, not just get out there and vote, but vote by mail. Bank those votes. Get people to do that. Be a poll watcher where you are. If you're in a state that's not a swing state, we had Scott Presler on last night, Presler. Just look him up. He's got a million ways that you can help to remind people of what the stakes are that are in swing states. It's guesstimated that maybe as few as 250,000 people in swing states making up their mind one way or another are going to determine all this in the end. Might be a little bit higher. I mean, Trump only won by 44,000 votes in toto in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan to go over the top against Hillary in 2016. And Biden only won by 80,000 in Pennsylvania the last time. It's around 1%, a little bit over 1%. And there were all kinds of shenanigans that I think are going to be stopped this time. So these are all doable. Will that be the outcome? All right, here's a caller in Pennsylvania, Jim in Pittsburgh, KDKA, great station. Hey, Jim, good evening. Go right ahead.
Love your story. Hey, I'm 72, Dom. I was going to go to law school. I decided not to. I was going when Watergate was unraveling, actually, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. There was a precedent to a Supreme Court case, okay? When there was an 18-minute gap, I told my buddies, I said, there's something devastating in there, okay? Rosemary Woods. Well, what it was, there was an Oval Office meeting between Haldeman and Ehrlich when they were two chiefs, and all blah, 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 blah. I'll make it quick. And Nixon said, no problem. We can keep the hush money up to keep the boys, Liddy and the boys, quiet down in the jail who did the break-in. Okay, sure. So once that tape was released, I was in college at the time. I'll never forget it. A professor says, it'll go to the Supreme Court quick. It did. I believe it was probably.
So what's the connection to this case, Jim? You think an appeal will go to the Supreme Court quickly?
Yes, I think, unless they worry about their lives, because it was an 8-0 decision to release the tapes. July 28th, 1974. He was gone in August 8th.
I got you. Thank you, Jim. Thanks very much. Look, I don't think the Supreme Court's going to be intervening in this. It would give me a great pleasure because I've interviewed Sam Alito 7 times to see that and to see what would happen. You want to see Judge Marchand in this? We'll see Sam Alito carve this up, a much smarter individual. All right, final calls of the hour coming up. And the bottom line here that we established with the attorney, this judge, he says, could sentence President Trump and incarcerate him, even though immediately doing that right on the cusp of the election, I think Trump wins the election right there if he tries to do that. Marco Rubio tonight saying Trump has already won. I'm not there yet with that. I think that's a little bit too out there. We don't know the full reaction, but the initial reaction on this is huge. And the Trump base, we know, is going to do this. It's independents. How are they going to go? Are they going to say, yeah, this is all okay? You can railroad someone like this. If they can do it to him, they can do it to me. Are they going to recognize that? We'll have some overnight polling. Tomorrow night's show, we'll have a little fodder. It's going to take a little while to know how people are reacting. But 50 million plus is a pretty good start. They're reacting negatively toward what happened here. All right, those calls straight ahead on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
And it's Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich tonight on a night where if you have a pulse, I'm sure you want to talk about this. And where were you when you saw this play out? I was rather surprised. We were told the jurors were going home. Then all of a sudden they pivoted. They were back in there and the verdict came down. And again, critical with the attorney we just talked with. The mysterious second crime wasn't specified because the judge, Marchand, did not put that interrogatory down so that we can find out as a matter of public record, not revealing any juror, what was it? In addition to that, as this whole thing plays out, it'd be a great TV show almost. Just ask people on the streets, wherever the city is, wherever you are tonight listening to America at Night, what was the crime here? You know, you've heard about this vaguely. You paying attention? I'm sure the answers would be bizarre to try to figure that out. And this now will get the attention of people who were not paying too much attention to it. How will they go? How will independents go? How does the swing state look? We'll have a little bit more knowledge of that, say, by the weekend, okay? But the indicators tonight are the energy. Is that just the Trump base, though? Or is it something else? And remember, we're talking really small margins in these swing states, a percentage point of how people are going to go. Biden tomorrow night, President Biden, or tomorrow afternoon, will announce we're going to call him convicted felon. How would this play out for the debate? Will you say, I can't debate a guy who's been convicted of these crimes? It's beneath the office. Will he feel emboldened by it? It all depends on the polling. I could see Biden pulling out, or I could see Biden talking about nothing else. And Hunter Biden trial, that starts on Monday. All right, a lot of show left tonight. Dom Giordano pinch hitting for Rich Valdes on America at Night.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hey, it's Tom Giordano pinch hitting tonight, but Rich is with us in spirit. He sent me what he put up on Truth Social from Rich Valdes about today's verdict. Yet another travesty of justice from the politically motivated left wing. Looks like America will get its first convicted felon POTUS. They're so afraid of him winning fair and square, they pulled this corrupt legal maneuver, and it's been backfiring since its inception. Genesis 50:20, hashtag Trump did nothing wrong. All right, so Rich with us in spirit tonight, weighing in with that. We got a great guest, a constitutional law expert, and somebody who's running for the Senate in Virginia. And by happenstance, a Roanoke College poll just today, or at least yesterday into today, says that it's a dead heat, Biden-Trump, Trump-Biden, in Virginia, of all places. That bodes well for Republicans. Jonathan Emord is our guest constitutional law attorney candidate for U.S. Senate in Virginia. Jonathan, welcome to America at Night.
Great to be with you, Dom.
Well, Republican primary in your race there coming up in a couple weeks in Virginia?
That's right, June the 18th.
And what's the issue among Republicans?
Well, without question, the two-tier system of justice is going to be a major issue because of this decision today. But also the open borders, inflation, and crime are really the primary issues.
Yeah, my sense of it, and I've been in Virginia a little bit, but, you know, when you're in Washington, you see the news coming out of Virginia. The illegal immigration thing for years in Northern Virginia has been a major issue.
Absolutely. You've got virtually unrestricted entry into the United States with drug traffickers, sex traffickers, MS-13, 18th Street gang members, Crips, Bloods, terrorists. I mean, it's just absolutely horrific situation of an invasion that really seems to be a planned destruction of the United States.
Absolutely. So, Jonathan, put on your constitutional law hat now. When you got this decision coming down today, and I'm sure you've been monitoring it, what do you see the issues are here, particularly given your background?
Well, I have to say that overall, without question, this is a day that will live in infamy, certainly within Manhattan, but also, I should say, across the nation, because what you've witnessed is really the total destruction of due process of law and the equal protection of the laws. You have a case that really was concocted, novel Alvin Bragg case, in which 34 counts for what was a petty business records case that was past the statute of limitations was given new life based on a strange coupling of a business records case with a felony and then transforming it into 34 felonies and then tying it to election interference. And the whole thing has just been a ridiculous thing. It's been dismissed right out of hand in the first instance because there simply is no way to reach a sound determination of law here. And yet, here we are. And I'm just shocked and appalled. I just don't think that this should ever happen in America, must never happen again, and really is in dire need of reversal on appeal.
Yeah, you mentioned the two-tier system of justice. I'm sure if you're the nominee, Republican nominee in Virginia, the only metric we have tonight that I see are the fundraising for Trump. Marco Rubio tweeted out approaching or past $50 million to determine how people see this, particularly in the presidential race. But I got to think independents, and I have to think in a state like Virginia, this should energize in your race big time.
Well, I think so, particularly in my race. What I've stood for throughout the campaign is the restoration of constitutional limits on government power. And what we've seen here is the politicization of justice, the total destruction of the rule of law, a total abnegation of judicial responsibility to be fair and impartial. And that I think, resonates well within our campaign and our appeal to the people of Virginia, because we have argued all along that our country is in dire need of a restoration of the Constitution. The Constitution hangs by a thread in this country. You have a president of the United States that not only runs roughshod over the rights of individuals, as he did in this case, by influencing this whole thing from the start, but also through the issuance of executive orders that are really law-making functions, and by an expansion of the administrative state, such that today 3/4 of all federal law is not the product of those we elect, as the Constitution requires in Article 1, Section 1, but rather the product of the unelected heads of over 250 different agencies, bureaus, and departments. This is an example of really the destruction of the greatest constitution in the world, of the greatest empire of liberty in the world, not from without, but from within, by a radical minority that has us by the throat. We are the majority, and this is our opportunity to reassert our rights. And doing so, I think, makes perfect sense by putting a constitutional expert in the position of guiding the nation and guiding the Senate in the direction of going back to liberty in the Constitution.
Well, I think you're exactly right. In the fourth branch of government, so-called the administrative state, people know this. They know it in their hearts. It's just making it kind of front page. And somebody with your know-how, certainly that's an issue. And again, this is an issue here. It's stunning how this has been approached today. Do you see any constitutional remedies here? We know the appeal process, and on that, it seems to me that President Trump will ultimately win, but that will not be in time for the election. Constitutionally, in addition to the things we saw on the surface, you're much deeper than that. What did you see here that was out of line?
Well, first of all, you have a federal office, President of the United States, and you've got the state of New York through Alvin Bragg attempting to hitch the case upon a election issue that is a FEC-related issue for which the FEC has already ruled. So you have supremacy here, the supremacy of federal law, and you have a state attempting to tie its case to a federal election issue that has been already resolved in favor of the president. Furthermore, you have a novel application where there's been no expenditure by Trump of campaign funds for this non-disclosure agreement. It was always private money. So there's no nexus to FEC federal election law, and there's no foundation for an application of a comparable state law. So that in and of itself is a misapplication of the law and a strange perversion of the supremacy of the laws, because the FEC should have the last word on federal election law, not a local judge in Manhattan.
And we couldn't even get the FEC guy to testify. All he would say, "Hey, the FEC started 30 years ago. That's about all I'm allowed to say." He wasn't allowed to testify why they didn't try to do anything about this.
Well, there's also a whole bunch of procedural problems here that are plain error. The judge apparently instructing the jury that only 4 jurors need find the president guilty was flat out wrong. And a violation of basic understanding of criminal justice inside New York. But nevertheless, it's also a violation of the president's due process rights. A lot of the evidence, you have uncharged misconduct that was allowed to be communicated about writ large by the prosecution. So you have massive amounts of irrelevant information coming in that's highly prejudicial. And the basic standard for admission of evidence was routinely violated by this judge. When prejudice exceeds probative value, you are not allowed to introduce evidence. And nonetheless, they did. And this judge is culpable for that. The whole thing is a sham trial. It really is. And if it's not reversed on appeal, New Yorkers who are in business have a lot of worries that they need to contemplate. This whole idea of compelling, when you compel someone to specify legal fees in this manner, what you're doing is invading the attorney-client privilege. The reason why lawyers put legal fees down instead of specifying precisely the nature of the services performed is because if they do, then they waive their attorney-client privilege or potentially waive that privilege, which is not theirs to rightfully waive. It's the client. So they put down legal fees. That was done here. And, of course, it was legal fees. The other outrage is that nothing was done here that it makes any common sense. I mean, the president rightfully put legal fees. There's nothing illegal or deceptive about that. And then to say, in addition, that somehow that affected the outcome of the election or even a single vote, no evidence whatsoever was presented as to that. And then you don't have any evidence of intent on the part of the president. You have speculative statements made by a disreputable witness in the form of Michael Cohen, whose testimony was contradictory and was not reliable. So
exactly.
I think there's a lot of problems here.
Well, Jonathan, thanks for breaking it down tonight. Now, where do people go to see more about you? What's your website?
It's Emord, EMORD, FORVA.com.
Good luck, Jonathan. Thank you. Thanks for jumping on tonight with us.
Thank you so much. Take care.
That's Jonathan Emord here on America at Night. We'll get your reaction. And I'll tell you the story of there's a fun column in the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is our big paper in Philadelphia. And sadly, even that has become political. It's called Down the Shore around Trump. And the people today talking about these Trump flags, they can't stand them on the beach, how tacky. I'll give you a sense of it. What do you think it's going to be like this weekend and in subsequent weekends on beaches and boats and cars and all the rest of it, given this decision? And your calls, that's next on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Absolutely. Rich Valdes, this is America at Night. I'm Giordano, pinch hitting. So there's this column out of Philadelphia that I think ties into, this weekend, taking a look at it, in which they write about all the things that happen at our Jersey Shore. I told you one night sitting in here for Rich about the violence that happened in Ocean City, New Jersey, which is nationally famous as America's family resort. So it's nice stuff. It's fun stuff. There's a lot of action at the Jersey Shore. Today, though, the woman that writes it gets into the biggest complaint suddenly. Why do we need these people with flags on the beaches? And you know, it started to unravel. It's the Trump flags. Why are they so divisive? Why are they going to continue to do this? Do you think after the trial's over, maybe they'll stop with this stuff? Can you just imagine in places where people go this weekend and subsequent? They're in Wildwood, New Jersey, not a big population in the off season. And, you know, people just transient during these months. There are 3 Trump stores now selling Trump material. And I just see on the boardwalk in Wildwood, these guys are celebrating tonight, not because they're anti-Trump, but because of the type of T-shirts that are going to be out there around all this, and the flags and related things. This is intensifying this, and it's hard to say because since 2015 or so, this has been more intense than anything I've ever seen in talk radio, and I've seen everything since 1986, 1987. This is the Super Bowl, and I'm looking online at the number of Trump sites that have crashed because of the demand of people trying to donate. We already heard from a guy tonight who said usually he's donated a little bit. He was looking at donating as we spoke, $10,000. Reports of 50 million potentially raised by tomorrow. I guess it could be 75 million. What does that tell us? It's the only metric we have as far as how this is being received. We know the base of Trump now, people, are even more intent to getting out there and doing something to win. The final verdict is not going to be the appeal court. It's going to be November 5th. And tomorrow you're going to see an all-out campaign by President Biden couching this as convicted felon Trump from the White House. Maybe he'll debate. Maybe he won't now. We'll see. Also, we unveiled tonight, we had a great attorney on. We kind of stumbled into this, indicating with me he thinks the judge in the so-called Washington, D.C., in the insurrection case could now move more aggressively and try to do something to further pound away at Trump here, rather than hang back because they're even more afraid he might win now. So if anybody tells you, oh, this is a definite win after what they did with Trump today, they're ridiculous. Nobody knows that. I'm not sure how that's going to cut. But the safe bet is what this has done is energize the base to levels that we've never seen. And two, potentially pull away some of these independents who were deciding here that this is unfair, it's over the top, it's ridiculous to try to take out a political opponent in this manner. The Biden people are counting on, there'll be blowback on this, but around the edges, some of these voters, like in the suburbs of Philadelphia where I am, are going to go with Biden. And that's going to be critical in the swing states where it's very, very close. We'll see who's right about this. The initial reaction is even more than I thought. The money being raised tonight is a good indicator. It is mind-boggling. The intensity of the callers that I've seen across talk radio in the, 6-7 hours since this is happening, people that never usually call, it's obvious something's triggered here. So we'll take more calls with you. Later on in the show, my interview today with Alan Dershowitz, right before this, what he said about Judge Marchand and what he witnessed in the courtroom. So these jurors have a lot to account for. They were biased against Trump going in. But the judge set this up, boxed them in a manner where they could convince themselves, hey, I'm just following what the law is here. The judge told me what it is. I have to follow those instructions. Are they better off in their lives to go home with this? Can they look in the mirror? Well, they're going to use that. And no one's going to bother them in New York, I don't think. If they had held out, they realize what trouble they might face. We'll hear more. Somebody's going to talk. You'll have a better sense of this. The telling fact is, though, the judge did not ask them to list what is the second crime. We haven't seen that. I don't know when we're going to see that. But your calls are next. We're coming right to you and getting as many people as we can. Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich Valdes on America at Night.
This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdes.
And this is Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich. Let me go to Jeremy in Pittsburgh, KDKA. Hey, Jeremy, welcome in.
All right, this is Joni.
Oh, Joni. Okay, Joni, hi.
Yes. And I thought that there would be an acquittal or a hung jury.
Yeah, well, there wasn't going to be any acquittal, but I agree with you. The hung jury was a safe play. That's where I thought this was going. But when I saw them come down this quickly on Thursday, at that moment, we knew what was going to happen.
And I don't know if I'll support Trump or not, but that's what I thought. I thought there would be a acquittal or a hung jury.
So tell me, well, you got a lot of evidence now. You got something fresh here. What is your decision then? You said you may or may not support him. What do you need to see?
I don't know. I haven't really followed the case that much, but I know I have friends who have.
Mm-hmm. All right, Joni, thank you. Thanks for that. People will come to it in their own time. One of the undecided in Pennsylvania, the ultimate swing state. Here's my buddy, the real Guido in Philadelphia, WEEU. Hey, Guido, welcome to the show.
Yeah, how you doing, Dom? You had some pretty good guests with legal minds, but I want to tell you something. This corrupt judge and jury make the good fellows look like a bunch of choir boys at a church picnic.
Yeah. Well, the judge here has set this in motion in a way that's amazing. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the founding fathers are definitely turning over in their graves, and I'm really disgusted.
Yeah, Guido, we're going to see if that disgust now is into energy or is it into people feeling what's the use? And that's the worst thing of all. We all know Trump can easily win in this. And if people see this as corrupt, why would you give up now? It's not over. In fact, he's tied in Virginia tonight, which is shocking.
Yeah, it is. And I believe he will win. And I think he's going to have a Reagan win. You know?
Well, that's possible because Joe Biden is barely getting by as we speak, and he's not going to get any better over the next couple of months. Thanks, Guido. Good to hear from you. Guido is an actor friend in Philadelphia and has been in with Denzel Washington, I think De Niro, I should have asked him about De Niro tonight. Marcus in Minnesota online with Dom Giordano sitting in. Hey, Marcus.
Hi, Dom. Good evening.
Good evening.
God forbid something happens to Judge Marchone or any of the jurors. Are you going to feel guilty for all the lying that you've been doing the past few weeks about them?
Well, you don't even know me the last few weeks. Have you been listening in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I have been. And
thank you. Thanks. So what lie? Let's stick to tonight because that's recent memory, if you would. What are we saying that's a lie tonight around here, Marcus?
So one of my favorite lies that you and others have been talking about is the fact that they did not need to unanimously find him guilty.
Right.
That's a total lie.
It is not. It's rare, and we've talked to umpteen people, Marcus, to say that when you have 4, 4, and 4, as the judge said, on these underlying crimes, that is rare. Now, we're not saying it's unconstitutional necessarily, and this whole case is called a novel case. Wouldn't you think it would be better to go after Trump? Let's look at the other 3 cases, for example. They're much more significant, particularly the one in Washington, than this case that is Frankenstein together. And I could agree with what you're saying here, that no matter what Trump would get convicted of, the base of his real supporters might say it's a Mickey Mouse. But this is a Mickey Mouse.
I don't think so at all. But you and the others have done a wonderful job of undermining our legal system. Congratulations.
Well, Marcus, thank you very much. I would thank you. Thanks for the call. I would counter that Alvin Bragg, we just told you about the machete attack today, just as an example in Manhattan, a guy who routinely has let vicious felons back on the street almost instantly, right? And yet was driven to concoct this to get a former president. You can't deny the disparity there. I have the same thing in Philadelphia with Larry Krasner, accused tonight of helping illegal immigrants and their lawyers to knock down violent cases they may be involved in so they wouldn't be deported. This is what we're facing. You know what people in New York are facing? Machete attack right there in Times Square. Routine stuff with this. Okay? And yet we're going to move heaven and earth to get Trump. Who was the victim in this crime? They can't name any victim in this crime. So, no, I'm not going to take responsibility. We're not calling upon people to go after the jurors, certainly, or Judge Merchan. But it's an obvious thing here. If you want to do something as weighty as take out a former president and someone running for that office again, wouldn't you want to do it with a judge who doesn't crawl with the baggage of Merchan? His own donations, his daughter is a big-time player with Democrats. Think about it. If you want to convince the people that are convincible, don't you think you'd want to do a better job of avoiding any angles of attack here? No, because it's not about convicting him really of a crime. It's about one thing, being able to put, I don't even think it's about holding Trump up so he can't campaign and all that stuff. It's more about what you're going to see tomorrow with President Biden, to call him a convicted criminal, that finally they got him. Just that brand for a few months, that's what they're running on. And it's smart because what else do they have to run on? So they're willing to take the hits for how outrageous this is, what a violation this is, in all the manners that we've talked about. And we're supposed to sit here and worry about the baggage if anything happens to Judge Merchan or the jurors. Who's calling for any of that? Trump didn't call for that today. He didn't say anything about that. All he was resolute in pushing back on this and saying the final verdict will be on Election Day. Yes, he's saying the situation was rigged here, and it was in New York. The object is Trump has got away with this stuff his entire lifetime. However you get him, just get him. We don't care what you make up or how you do it, just get him. So that's calling for violence against the judge, etc., pointing out his daughter and the whole corruption here. Alvin Bragg. Let's see how the machete attackers, when they're out of jail. So you're not going to put that burden on us that we're calling for anything to be done to any of these people with lies. We're telling you straightforward, this was the worst case of all of them. And when they call it a novel case, they mean it's made up. How can you be trying what is a federal case at the state level? Not allowed to challenge this. That's calling for something to happen to somebody. No way. All right, 855-839-1210. I'm sorry, what am I lapse into that? It's Philadelphia. My God. It's 833-4-Valdes. Dom Giordano sitting in. Nice try, though, with the guy from Minnesota. We'll take more of your calls coming up here on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-Valdes. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdes. That's Valdes with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
And with Dom Giordano pinch hitting in for Rich tonight. Easy to get to me at 833-482-5337. Breaking down, we had some great people on here of where this goes next and exactly what happened today and what it means. And again, I thought Trump struck the right tone today coming out. There was no zeroing in on anything remotely triggering people towards Judge Merchan or the daughter or anything else. And I think the gag order is still in operation till after the sentencing, which is the great unknown now, July 11th. But this judge, here's how I would put it. Some of these jurors might have been, we believed, ready to duke it out over this since it's so nebulous what the second charge is. It's not even on the final jury paper that came out. But the judge boxed them in effectively enough here where they could go along with this and look themselves in the mirror and say, and you're going to hear this over the next 24 hours. They're going to say, look, I'm not a lawyer. There were two lawyers in there. Maybe they took charge a bit. And they said, look at the judge's instructions. Look at what he's telling you to do. He's the arbiter of what the law is here. And based upon those things, we find enough to convict here. 55 pages of instructions. And under this dumb New York law, You're not able to take that into the jury room. That's the thing that's just mind-boggling. And we saw this nonsense. That law has to be changed. But there was nothing on the final bill that said, what was the underlying, what's the second crime here? Don't you think America is owed to know, to call me Marcus, is that ridiculous? To ask what that was? It's not breaching the individual jurors. But did they say 444? I mean, what's a lie about that? That is novel. I mean, I've not practiced law, but I've studied it, went to law school, and I don't remember seeing cases like this. It is new. That doesn't mean that it's out of bounds automatically, but you have to question it. How can you vote on any other underlying crime and still be unanimous if you find some underlying crime to attach here? Does that seem logical? It does not. It doesn't pass that test, and that was the critical element here. All right, let's get in a couple more callers here at 833, the number 4, Valdes. Let's go to John in Burlington, Vermont. I'm sorry, Diane in Chicago, WGN. Hey, Diane, thanks for the wait. Go ahead.
Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
I was reading, and I'm not finished with it. I get very detailed into things, and if I had been on that jury, there is so many convolutions and everything. Now, Cohen, he's full of remorse in his book that he wrote in prison in 2020. So he was bitter against Trump, but he was admitting to so many things. So it's like a roller coaster to read, and he's got even a sense of humor and everything, but it's accurate. He says he had permission to, he said, I had access to Trump's Twitter account and permission to post on his behalf, one of only 2 people with that privilege. I'd been part of the brain trust coming up with juvenile taunts to O'Donnell, you know that, remember that, Rosie O'Donnell, and I was acutely aware of the childish impulse behind the insults. He was putting words in Trump's mouth and being very assertive when Trump he wanted Trump to run for president, and his interest in Trump was waning a little. He sort of hobnobbing with Steve Wynn and Mark Cuban, he says in his book. And then he said, but you could see how he really got interested in the run for president. So then you get these deep state types. You get Roger Stone, who Trump called a pervert. And these people that he starts pushing toward Trump, wanting him to get interest in running. Now, at this time is a time when this thing with Pecker and all that was going on too. So the jury should have rightfully dissected more so the call with Pecker and all of that. This is very vague. Trump he was not really interested in running for president, so I don't think it was anything that he cared so much about the legal expense thing. It was Weisselberg.
I get your motivation. Thank you. I don't know if they followed up on that, Diane, or not. That to her point, that, how much was people like Cohen driving this? They saw an opportunity here. I'm not sure about that. I thought Trump wanted to run for president, but the Cohen book says things a little bit differently. It wouldn't be a night, though, unless I play you Rachel Maddow, guys. Here's Rachel Maddow on the Trump verdict, just to give you the other side. I'm living in my bubble here. I see it pretty clearly what happened here, but Rachel Maddow sees it differently.
This is a definitive and, this is an irreducible verdict. He can appeal. I'm sure he will appeal. But this is everything that the prosecution asked for from a jury that, by all accounts, took this thing very, very seriously. We counted the deliberation hours down here. Mm-hmm. The test here for us as a country is not about what happens on appeal and is not about what happens in sentencing. The test for us now as a country is whether or not this former president and his allies will have succeeded in trying to undermine the rule of law so that people reject this as a legitimate function of the rule of law in our country. They have tried to delegitimize this judge. They have tried to delegitimize this court. They have tried to delegitimize these proceedings. They've even tried to delegitimize the laws that he was charged under. Those efforts are the tests that we now have as a country. The people involved in bringing this case have been threatened and intimidated and had everything brought to bear on against them in a way that was designed to delegitimize this process in the eyes of the American people.
All right, so that's our side. So anytime you see the challenge here, Anybody ask Rachel Maddow, what's the line that's crossed here between challenging this? You're right, Rachel. When your liberty's at stake, the presidency's at stake. Anything you do, any challenge here to this progressive DA who's out of control is delegitimizing. Could it be that a guy who routinely lets guys with machetes out there in Times Square out after an attack like today, and yet comes up with this convoluted system to snare a former president, that might not be legitimate? Is it legitimate? The number of people that have attacked people that are back on the streets of New York within hours, is that a legitimate system? Right away, the legitimacy argument. If you argue against what they have set into motion, because they set it into motion, it's not legitimate. More calls coming up. Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich Valdes.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. America at Night with Rich Valdes.
And Dom Giordano pinch hitting for Rich tonight, taking as many calls as we can as people react to some of the developments. One of the biggest, the fundraising is astounding, telling you how hot this is. But there will be other metrics that we can measure what's happening with this after President Biden speaks tomorrow. And tomorrow night, we'll cover that, see what the reaction is to how he plays it. Then the Hunter Biden trial starts on Monday. You know, most people did not say today, and Trump didn't say today, good, let's get every Democrat now. Okay, but people did warn, you do something like this, you concoct something like this, and what do you expect is going to happen when Republicans are in the catbird seat and can take out a political opponent? You start doing this, it's mutually assured destruction. John is in Burlington, Vermont. WVMT. Hey, John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good, interesting program down tonight.
Thank you, John.
I'm not sure why there's such a hubbub about this case and the decision. I don't think it's going to change many people's votes. Nobody got hurt, right? All we have is a businessman. All right, he's kind of wealthy, cheats on his wife when she's pregnant with a porn star. He doesn't want her to know, and he doesn't want the general public to know because, he happens to be running for president. So he cheats on his paperwork a little bit. What American male businessman wouldn't do the same thing in the same position?
Yeah, and John, you're getting to something here. The mixed motives of this, is it solely to win the election? Even then, is that really what won the election? Or is it also his wife, the embarrassment of it, kids, et cetera? Mixed motives on this. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and it's not going to change my vote. Donald Trump is the most corrupt, ignorant, and dangerous person to ever occupy the White House, and hopefully the American public will see that.
All right, John, thank you. Thanks so much. Well, the thing of it is, though, the Biden people are on something here. Their internal polling tells them in the swing states, they think this is going to swing just enough voters to carry some of those states. All right, big hour straight ahead. Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich Valdes on America at Night.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdes, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdes.
Hey, Dom Giordano pinch hitting for Rich tonight, but Rich is with us in spirit. He wanted to make sure that I passed on to you what he posted on Truth Social about today's events. Rich wrote, yet another travesty of justice from the politically motivated left wing. It looks like America will get its first convicted felon POTUS. They're so afraid of him winning fair and square, they pulled out this corrupt legal maneuver, and it's been backfiring since its inception. Genesis 50:20, hashtag Trump did nothing wrong. Now, right before the verdict came down, I'm on noon to 3 at Talk Radio 1210 in Philadelphia. I had on one of my favorite guests, Alan Dershowitz. And Dershowitz was just getting off the phone with his publisher, he told me. He's writing an update to Get Trump, his book that says they'll just do anything to get him. He was in the courtroom, saw Judge Marchand when he sent the jury out, and he said, you really see how dictatorial this judge was. And he talked about, we had a caller tonight saying, are you proud of yourself, Dom? You know, of something, Judge Marchand, people threatening him, his daughter, the jurors. You guys proud of yourself with the lies? Dershowitz, and what I'm going to play you, laid out what he has gone through because even though he's a liberal, he defended President Trump, the impeachment, and various other things. He's a constitutionalist. He's a law guy. And he laid out how his life, his associations, that he didn't get into it in this, but he's told us before about Larry David screaming at him, this match back and forth in Martha's Vineyard coffee shop. You know, that whichever side you take in this, even if you're doing it legitimately, there's going to be fire. These are big issues. These are volatile times. All right, here's my interview right before the verdict today with Alan Dershowitz. You said something about Judge Marchand that I don't think most judges in this situation would ever break that glass, because if he does what you suggest could happen about tagging in an alternate juror in a situation, that would be devastating for the country.
It would be. It would be. It's happened in the past in a limited number of cases where you get jurors that are 11-1 for conviction, and there's one holdout. And the foreman goes to the judge and says, well, there's nothing we can do to persuade this guy. He won't participate. He just puts his arms on his chest and says, no, he's innocent. He's innocent. Sorry. And in a couple of those cases, the judge has said, well, if you won't participate in the discussions at all, then you're not an appropriate juror. And they bounced the juror and brought in a alternate jury, and they got an immediate conviction. I don't put it past this judge to do that. It would be utterly unconstitutional, improper, unethical, and illegal.
Yeah. What does Alan Dershowitz see? You were in the courtroom and you said you saw the real Marchand when everybody else was out. Specifically, what do you see in this guy?
I see a guy who's determined to preside over a conviction, whether to help his daughter, I don't know, whether to make sure he's acceptable by New York society. He doesn't want to be Dershowitz. That's become a verb now. Everybody knows what happened to me when I defended Donald Trump as president in front of the United States Senate. I was canceled by all my old friends on Martha's Vineyard, many of my colleagues at Harvard Law School, many in the legal profession. My family, my wife, my children were canceled. And, you know, I have a thick skin. But a lot of judges don't want to experience that. If you live in New York, Manhattan, where it's, 85 to 90% anti-Trump, the judge clearly wants to be on the, quote, good side of this case. And that became so clear when he went ballistic with lawyer Costello. He had his, De Niro moment. De Niro was outside of the court house the other day ranting and raving, but the judge was De Niro in the courthouse. You looking at me? Hey, you looking at me? You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? He went berserk because this lawyer stared him down and raised his eyebrows. Let me tell you, I raised my eyebrows when I saw some of those rulings as well.
Professor, you really just unearthed something here, too. With the reason I like Sam Alito, and it's not about the flag stuff now and showing partiality. The first time I interviewed him, we were just talking about the Phillies, and he told me he kept a scorebook on the Phillies games. He's from the area, and he said he does his legal work, and then he sits there with the scorebook. Sometimes, Dom, he criticizes and overrules the umpires. I didn't see this guy going to Georgetown parties and wanting to fit in that city in that manner. He was what he was. And that's, to your point, what I would want in a judge. You can do it, but that's got to be incredibly difficult, particularly when your daughter is so deeply involved in a big league way with Democrat politics. You just can't be in this case.
Yeah, and the same hypocrites who say that Alito should be out of the case because of his wife or Thomas say nothing about Judge Marchand, who has a much greater financial stake, even if indirect, through his daughter in the outcome of this case and in the rulings in this case. So there's a lot of hypocrisy there. I've met Sam Alito a few times. I like him very much. He's a very, very straight guy. And he told me one day that the reason he became a criminal lawyer was because of seeing me in court when he was a law clerk to a judge that I was in front of. And I was very honored by that, obviously. I don't agree with many of his decisions. I agree with his decision today on the NRA, unanimous decision, rare unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. But you don't have to agree with somebody to admire them. And, he's a human being, and his wife is a human being, and she has her constitutional rights to fly a flag. I wouldn't have done it. And I don't think she'll do it again. But the criticism of him is way overwrought.
Now, it's a twofer with Alan Dershowitz here. You mentioned that NRA decision. I haven't been able to get to it today. I'm aware of it. Tell me why you're supportive of what the Supreme Court did here.
The Supreme Court, obviously, the three liberals don't like the NRA, but they ruled in the NRA's favor, saying the government was punishing the NRA, that liberal political figures in New York were trying to punish the NRA because they disagreed with its views, and the government can't be on the side of one or the other. They have to be neutral. And I think that opinion, by the way, will have real implications to what's going on in university campuses today as universities try to take sides on issues like BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel, or DEI. I think the Supreme Court may be moving toward requiring more neutrality from government institutions, which would be a very good thing. I wish universities would be neutral as well. Universities should not take positions on Israel, on elections, on any controversial issues. They should. Their job is to teach, not to propropagandize.
Your book, Get Trump, needs another edition, I would say, after
it's getting
this.
One. It's going to get one.
There you go. I thought I should have known.
I just spoke to my publisher. Yeah, I spoke to my publisher today, and I said, regardless of the verdict, let's put out an additional version in which I do an essay on the outcome of the case. So I think that may happen. We'll see. It could be.
I know how the wheels turn here. I don't know how you fit all this in, including the Durr Show, which is available on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, and I have to check that out every day. Have you seen, in your experience, this 444 thing where the judge says, hey, you can say this is the reason, falsifying business, or it can be election fraud, or the third reason, and if four say that and four say this, you're all unanimous, though. You found a reason. Is that done a lot?
No, it's done in places where it's clear what the crime is, drug crimes mostly. But it should not be done in cases where the crimes are as amorphous as this one is. These crimes were unbelievably amorphous. A tax violation that, in his mind, that 2 years hence he might take a deduction or might not take a deduction, or his accountant might take a deduction. You can take that into account, or you can say he was defrauding the voting public, because the voting public all thought for sure that he was a virgin and never had done anything improper sexually. And so if they had learned about the Stormy Daniels thing, that would have clearly changed the outcome. The prosecution had the nerve to actually argue that if the Stormy Daniels thing come out before the election, it would have changed the election results and Hillary Clinton would have been president. They actually argued that to the jury.
That's election denial right there, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, the prosecution in this case did a lot of things wrong. They misrepresented a very crucial fact to the jury. They said you could convict without believing Michael Cohen. No, you can't. The crucial conversation, which allegedly occurred in the Trump Tower and involved Alan Weisselberg, who wasn't called as a witness, The only witness to that conversation, alleged conversation, is Cohen. And if you don't believe Cohen, you can't convict. You cannot prove without Cohen that Trump knew or engineered or participated in or conspired with how these payments would be listed by an accountant. You need Cohen for that. And the prosecution misled the jury on that.
Absolutely. Professor, thank you so much on a day like this. We appreciate it. Can hardly wait till the edition
Anytime.
to the Get to the Trump book. And thank you. Thanks for sharing everything today.
Sure. Take care. Bye.
There is Professor Alan Dershowitz with Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich tonight. You get in at 833, the number 4, Valdes. Said a lot of stuff there about Judge Merchan, who is at the center of this. Coming up, what did RFK Jr. say about saving democracy? It's kind of a line that goes back to Vietnam and this case, but a lot of your calls here on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. Call now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdes with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich. RFK Jr. weighing in on what happened today. Remember the line from Vietnam, we destroyed the village in order to save it? He said you can't save democracy by destroying democracy. You know, this democracy game, Trump's going to destroy democracy. Well, certainly a way of viewing this is banana republic time. That's what New York is, where you have machete attackers back on the street, but not a former president of the United States, and people celebrating. You just heard Alan Dershowitz, Get Trump, Part 2. That's all that was needed. And not even the bottom line, sending him to prison, although they like to do that. It's just a 3, 4, 5-month thing. Think about it. Between now and July 11th, they got the tag on him that he is a convicted felon. On July 11th, Judge Merchan, I predict, is at least going to recommend or say prison time, probably post the appeals. And that will be the second tag that they can put on him. This guy's going to prison. How can this guy be president? What are you going to tell your kids about this? Think about that. Think about a guy with Hunter Biden and all the business connections. The Hunter Biden trial starts, and one of the things that's going to come up this week, remember those little children killed at Sandy Hook? Hunter Biden, now it comes out, was introducing then Vice President Biden at an event that Vice President Biden wanted Hunter out around memorializing, remembering the Sandy Hook innocents who were killed and meeting with people there. How outrageous. That trial starts this coming week. So we're going to see about decency. And a guy like Biden and Dr. Jill Biden, who last year, well, past Christmas, they did 2 Christmas ago, they put up the stockings in the White House in the public room there, and they didn't include the last grandchild, I believe it's Navy, through Hunter Biden's former girlfriend in Mississippi. This year, they didn't show the stockings publicly because they still do not want to acknowledge that child. It's got to be tough, I have to admit. But I don't need to hear the lessons we're going to hear from Biden tomorrow about decency. Let's go to Wes in Fort Washington Beach, Florida, online. Hey, Wes, go right ahead.
Marvelous. Thank you so much. First time, long time, first time, and thank goodness you're on this show, but I get to hear you as you guest host in other times. Now, the reason why this called, and I don't need the accolades, but when a caller says, hey, I want to donate $10,000, that's great to the billionaire. I get it. I mean, I'm a businessman. However, would not, and let me follow up with this. When Rush Limbaugh said, our great father who gave us all of this when he says now's not the time to panic. I'm saying, when could not that $10,000 go towards, 10 Glocks to when we are prepared to be panicked? I'm asking your opinion. When should we be prepared? That's my question.
Well, right now, but, my personality, West, is always urgency. And now is the time to solidify what this whole thing means, meaning if the polling remains pretty steady where Trump has been, psychologically, that's going to force the Biden people to consider doing something else if they see what they say they're looking for, a slight turn toward Biden. Then it changes the dynamic. If you heard today in Virginia, Roanoke College, certainly not a conservative outfit, their polling had Trump and Biden even in Virginia. So these are perilous times for the Biden side. That's why he agreed to the debate. And I'm going to be waiting tomorrow night to see the initial overnight polls. So I would say now is the time to strike. And symbolically, when Trump raises $50 million off this, that takes away some of the sting. It makes people think, well, you know what? A lot of people are seeing this as a persecution. How about you? How do you see what should be done?
I am an American. I'm a patriot. I'm a special ops guy, and I'm telling you, there are American patriots. There are American felons. That there are people with skills. There are people that are ready to rise up, not attack. We're not talking. We don't want January 6th. That was bad. That was good. That there were both sides to that. However, there are people ready.
All right, Wes. Thank you. I'm going to cut you off there. Sorry. Nice call up into them. We're not going to go anywhere near any of that stuff. I'm sorry. That's my rule. That's best for everybody, including you. Let's not even no. So if you're suggesting that. Trump didn't talk about anything like that today, and I think they are reveling in the fundraising that's going on through this, which is the biggest vote of confidence. You heard the guy with the $10,000 on the show tonight. That's where we're headed. All righty, it's 833, the number 4 of Valdes. You heard a lot from Alan Dershowitz in there, too, that I think was really solid about Marshawn. Would this guy be emboldened to sentence Trump to prison? My answer is, I'm betting he will. Because he gets the game. He wants it to be seen not just as convicted felon Trump, but prisoner Trump, potentially, for that run-up right on the heels, right before the Republican convention. That's what he's wanting to get out of this. Remember, this is just a brief afterlife of this. It's not going to go on forever. They're going to lose on appeal on this. Even if it has to go through New York, ultimately they'll lose on appeal. All right, we got a lot more people to get in. Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich Valdes on America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Hey, welcome in. Dom Giordano from Philadelphia sitting in for Rich, and I have in front of me the editorial. I'm sure they burned the midnight oil over at the Philadelphia Inquirer of how they see this. Finally, the whole editorial is about Trump and what happened today. Maybe this isn't perfect, but finally the world and justice caught up with him. And they talk about all of his gullible supporters. They go on to say the evidence was overwhelming. Now, it's one thing to say, look, in the end, there was enough evidence here. But if you think the evidence was overwhelming in this, okay, you got Trump derangement. I get it. You can't take it. He's gotten away with it. Isn't it better to be reasonable and to go after him in cases that were more significant? The evidence was not overwhelming here. The Inquirer says the judge was beyond fair, giving Trump more leeway than any normal defendant as the former president repeatedly violated gag orders. Now, the point I would make for anybody, if I were a judge, and my rule in this, particularly, I don't care if it's on the left or right, if you're running for president of the United States in a situation like this, you have to be very careful and make the gag orders limited. And you could argue if you limited it toward things that were calling attention to people that just worked in the court, things of that nature. But Trump is supposed to avoid talking about this judge who has immense conflict here with the daughter, and or the daughter, who is this huge Democrat fundraiser, digital person. You know, not somebody in a backbench. This is a real thing. Is that something he just can't talk about because of the possible repercussions? I don't think so. You got to be very careful with gag orders, particularly when you're in a presidential race with the main person and a former president. And Merchan did issue them and then didn't go any further, to his credit, in putting Trump in confinement there, because I think he realized that this would be very difficult. They claim that Trump barely mounted a defense, calling just 2 witnesses compared with 20 called by the prosecutors, and he turned this into a circus. My God, there's no mention here in the Philadelphia Inquirer, though, of Robert De Niro. What was the biggest circus moment of this? Wasn't it De Niro showing up there, apparently, more than apparently, aided and abetted with the Biden spokespeople? I thought that was going to turn the jury off, some of the stuff that was going on like this. To some, Trump's criminal conviction for falsifying business records to cover up an alleged affair with an adult film star may seem like a minor offense. But the trial was not about a sexual affair. It was about breaking the law to influence the outcome of a presidential election. Now, again, we hear all the time from the Inquirer and places like this, you're an election denier. So what they're saying there in that statement, essentially, is if Trump did not do this, he would have lost to Hillary Clinton in 2016. That's what their argument is. And we've been through this. We've been through this contention in this case. How did they get there? And isn't that a federal matter here of something that was violated? Indeed, the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, coming on the heels of Trump's Access Hollywood tapes, may have changed the course of history by avoiding another scandal days before the 2016 election. Trump eked out a victory, winning 3 states by just 80,000 votes combined. Just think of how much better off the country and the world would have been if Trump lost in 2016. And then they go on through that. Could it be if Hillary Clinton had any kind of authenticity, any kind of personality or ability, because she's certainly smart enough, capable in that manner, any kind of credibility, maybe she would have won, that this isn't the thing that put her over the top. But that's what they want to rest on here. The fact that Trump won that election because they were able to cover up Stormy Daniels. Now think about how many times in history, what did Bill Clinton do? Bill Clinton, every bit as much, if not more than Trump, had bimbo eruptions. All these women of one sort or another that were involved here. And he didn't have non-disclosures, whatever, so they had to do all kinds of things to go after them with Carvel and others. This is long a practice. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying it's the type of thing that goes on. People try, in one way or another, to hold back information that could be embarrassing to them. All right? So to say that what Trump did here is that out of order and would have cost the election is ridiculous, particularly given their support for the Clintons. All right, let's take another call or two here at 833, the number 4, Valdes. Let's go to Tomas in Rutland, Vermont on WVMT. Tomas, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Dom. It's number of thoughts here. This has been, the United States has been, had the freest press in history probably for a long time, but for many decades, the left has had the major influence. And I'm just thinking about how they abuse the power of the edit. Shouldn't they tell half the country, don't pollute yourselves turning on those right-wing animals, the haters and bigots. We'll take care of things. We'll tell you we agree how they are. And the public is deprived. Most of the people I know are not Republicans, and they're full of animosity to Trump. But they're denied so many facts, and they're denied even media citing all his achievements. His main thing he's guilty of is embarrassing the lazy, spoiled left who've been coasting for decades with their words and nobody holding them accountable to their actions and their non-actions.
Yeah, I would agree, Thomas. And you know what else he did? He went after the Uniparty, the Republicans like Mitch McConnell and others. He was kryptonite to them, not just to the left, but the establishment there. And a guy who, I think his biggest accomplishment, aside from the Supreme Court, is to try to keep America out of unending wars. And you think everybody would salute that.
Oh, you don't even hear about it. And then the left criticized him when he was president or early on or something with Kim Jong-il. You got to talk to him. Well, he did exactly the right thing. He went toward the difficult adversary and had some sort of communication, some sort of relationship. But where the left lies misery. Barack, remember the hot mic when he was president, and he didn't know the mic was live when he had Medvedev, the puppet president of Russia. He says, you tell Vladimir things will be, I forget exactly.
Tell Vlad, I'm elected again. Things are going to be better here. Thank you, Tomas. I'm impressed, too, that you remembered the Russian puppet there who's still there and making a lot of money. All right, more calls coming up at 833-482-5337 with Dom Giordano pinch hitting. So by any metric that I can see, and I'm itching to start to see, and I know in talk radio people are always critical of polls. You have to put them into context. But when you get any number of polls coming out of this, I'm looking to see just in the swing states, the 6 swing states, how people are reacting to this, particularly independents, et cetera. The one metric that we have tonight, it's ferocious, the fundraising for Trump. We're seeing stories of one guy who contributed $300,000, Lee Zeldin, talking about how easy it was to get $800,000 from another well-heeled contributor. Elon Musk has not chipped in yet, but there's talk that he might. He's in talks around that. And I had a guy call me tonight saying he was given $10,000. All right, that's only one measure, though. This thing could end up playing out in different ways. Remember, this is a very tight race. There's not going to be any one magical moment here. I do think it would have been better for Trump. I'm not in the camp that says he wins the election because he was convicted. I think it would be better to be unconvicted, to say I was persecuted, and yet I still beat them. I came through the fire. But there is upside to this. And this judge potentially is not done yet. We could have a real crisis on July 11th if he sentenced Trump to prison. Then an appellate court might have to step in and stop him from going to prison. How would that play out if he's in prison? I think it cuts toward Trump. But again, it limits him with the convention coming just days later. I'd love to have you get in. Great call by Thomas. 833, the number 4, Valdes, gets you to me, Dom Giordano, in for Rich tonight.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
Hey, Dom Giordano sitting in for Rich tonight here in America at Night. The Philadelphia Inquirer closes their editorial for tomorrow's paper. Strangely, those who are found guilty of felonies can still run for president. So voters must decide if they want a convicted criminal in the White House. Should people found guilty of felonies still be able to run for president? Yeah, I think they should. This is a paper that routinely defends murders and everything else. What about their rights? But you shouldn't be able to run for president, even though at the New York Times and Inquirer, they got to know. This is a misdemeanor. This is the type of thing, even if guilty of whatever, that's treated as a misdemeanor. It's been bumped up into 34 felonies, and suddenly it's an outrage. You see where this is going. I'm giving you the game plan that you're going to hear more of tomorrow. And the Trump people are opening an office in Philadelphia on Tuesday. They haven't said where yet because they're concerned about security. So this works both ways. When we hear you better not say anything about this because people are getting threats. All right, let's go here on the America at Night to Paul in Boise, Idaho on KBOI. Hey, Paul, thanks for listening and thanks for calling.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking my call. Is it Dom or Don?
It's Dom with an M. I make a big deal out of it. Just kidding, Paul, because I get Don all the time. D-O-M, yes.
Okay, so it's Dominic maybe, huh?
Yes, Dominic, yes.
Okay, so you're Italian. That's a good person to be, an Italian. I grew up with them, surrounded by them, mostly Sicilians.
Oh, well, I'm more from the Giordanos were for Naples, but it's not too far from Sicily.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you talked a lot about it, and I heard quite a bit about it because I listened to it for 3 hours just before I got off work, and I saw it coming down the track, and there was no going back. They started the ball rolling by neglecting to do some simple things that you find in a average, every ordinary situation of going to court and having to, have a lawyer by your side speaking for you, and especially not being able to speak because you're told that you're going to get fined $1,000 every time you open your mouth. The one that really got me, though, was not the obvious ones. It's the ones where he sent them home over the holiday weekend. I was on a jury a number of years back, close to 32 years, as a matter of fact. And I got sequestered. Didn't necessarily want to be in that hotel room for the weekend, but he could have sequestered him, and I thought that it gave a really unfair advantage by not sequestering over the holiday weekend when he could have. It would have been a cause.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Thank you, Paul. I agree with you on that. I thought, too, they were moving toward, hey, there's nothing here. There's reasonable doubt at a certain point. Look, I was on last night all this week for Rich, and I'll stick by what I said. I was convinced this would go on through Friday. I said last night, if we get past Thursday and it's into Friday, you're going to start to hear about a hung jury. So we don't know yet what it is. But I would tell you this. Think about it. These lawyers particularly. This jury was under tremendous pressure where they are. A lot of anti-Trump sentiment. People buying into, you let us turn into a dictatorship because you didn't stop them. Tremendous pressure where they are. We're going to hear, though, over the weekend, you're going to hear a juror or two talk about what it was like in the room. Why did they, at the 11th hour, pivot today? They were headed home and go back to the notion of coming up with a verdict all of a sudden. That was kind of unusual. But the judge did not make them put down what was the underlying second crime here that triggered this. That was his decision to avoid that. I think we ought to know that. What did they settle on? Then we'd have a better sense of what this jury did and how they arrived at this. Was it the campaign finance? Was it the falsifying the business record? Was it the tax violation? All right? Did they all see it the same way? These things are important in this debate about exactly what happened here. All right, more calls coming up, though. 833-482-5337. Great calls tonight. I can tell people are engaged, and by tomorrow, we're going to see some polling. We're going to see these fundraising numbers. We're going to see various people trying to, and the big thing, we're going to see President Biden from the White House calling Trump a convicted felon or criminal, something of that nature. That's what we're going to talk about. I can see it already. Jump in, Dom Giordano, in for Rich.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdes. This is America at Night with Rich Valdes.
It certainly is with Dom Giordano. Thrilled to be with you on really an historic night. And tomorrow, you know, we've had 24 hours or so to think about it, even bigger tomorrow night to see exactly how this is being received. So let's get to Jim in Las Cruces, New Mexico on KOBE. Hey, Jim, welcome to the America at Night.
Hi, I've been afraid to listen to the radio, but I did listen to the caller who took umbrage with you. He started calling you names, calling you a liar. And it sounded like he's really never a fan of the show, that he's just calling cold and probably doesn't even know who he's talking to. Have there been other callers like him that they seem to be from left field? You know, they're like Somali pirates trying to get into the wheelhouse.
The seminar callers, Rush used to call them. No, he was about the only one tonight that we had. But you know what? It takes 24 hours for that to develop, or you might hear more tomorrow night.
Okay. But it seemed like he was, coached to say all those things he was saying. And he gave himself away when he didn't seem to know. He said, I've listened to you all week long. Well, if
yes.
you're just, that didn't sound truthful to me. So,
no, good on you, Jim. Exactly right. And, I don't mind somebody calling in and wants to debate the finer points of this, but the idea that we're putting people at risk, we just have to shut up. We're delegitimizing everything when all we're doing is a normal challenge when you're talking about what the stakes are. Thank you, Jim. Thanks very much for the call. Hey, thanks to everyone on this big night for listening. Thanks to Alex Hinton for producing and the staff here at America at Night. Dom Giordano, follow on Twitter at DomShow1210 here on America at Night.